Okay, imagine walking into a McDonald's. You've got a counter, a menu, hot food ready to go, maybe some colorful artwork on the walls, and a bunch of people grabbing a quick bite before they rush off to whatever they've got going on. Now imagine that exact same scene, but it's 2,000 years ago. Everyone's wearing togas, and instead of a Big Mac, you're ordering slow-cooked pork with a side of crushed fava beans and a cup of cheap wine. Because ancient Rome had fast food chains. Not kind of. Not metaphorically. They had actual physical, exposed counter, ready-to-eat fast food restaurants on nearly every street corner. And we're not guessing about this. Archaeologists literally found the menus. They found the kitchens. They found the food still in the pots. So buckle up, because today we're talking about Thermopolia, the Roman Empire's answer to drive-through dining, and honestly, they might have had better food than most of what we eat today. So let's start with the basics. The word thermopolium comes from the Greek words for hot and to sell. A thermopolium was literally a place that sold hot food, and these weren't rare. These weren't novelties. In the city of Pompeii alone, archaeologists have identified at least 80 thermopolia, and Pompeii was not a big city. We're talking maybe 11 to 20,000 people. That means there was roughly one fast food joint for every 150 to 250 residents. For comparison, in the modern United States, there's approximately one fast food restaurant for every 300 people. Rome's fast food density might have actually been higher than ours, and the design of these places was remarkably standardized, which is why I keep using the word chain. Picture an L-shaped or U-shaped stone counter built right into the front of a building, facing the street. Embedded into this counter were large clay pots called dolia. These dolia were sunk into the counter and kept warm from below, kind of like a modern steam table or buffet line. Each pot held a different ready-made dish. You'd walk up, point at what you wanted, somebody would ladle it into a bowl or onto a plate. You'd pay your few coins, and you'd either eat standing at the counter or take it to go. Sound familiar? It should. The basic workflow of fast food hasn't changed in 2 millennia. Now here's where it gets really fun, because we don't have to guess what was on the menu. In 2019 and 2020, archaeologists working in Pompeii fully excavated a remarkably well-preserved thermopolium in Region 5 of the city. This thing was stunning. The painted counter featured vivid frescoes of a sea nymph riding a horse, chickens, ducks, and a dog on a leash. But more importantly, they found food. Actual, identifiable, 2,000-year-old food still sitting in the dolia. Using chemical and biological analysis, the team identified traces of pork, fish, snails, beef, and goat. They found crushed fava beans, which were a staple of the Roman working-class diet. They found evidence of a dish called a paella-like mixture that combined multiple types of meat together, kind of like a Roman stew or casserole. They also found wine residue, because of course they did. Romans drank wine with basically every meal, but the wine at Thermopolia was usually cheap stuff, often diluted with water and sometimes sweetened with honey or flavored with spices. There were also fragments of duck bone, which tells us this particular thermopolium was serving some slightly upscale options alongside the everyday basics. Think of it like a fast food place that has both a dollar menu and a premium sandwich. Some dishes were simple and dirt cheap. Others cost a little more but offered variety. We also know from other historical and archaeological sources that Thermopolia commonly served things like lentil soup, cheese, bread, olives, and nuts. Some had small ovens in the back for baking or warming bread. And one of the most popular items across the Roman world was something called pulse, which was a thick porridge made from emmer wheat. It's not glamorous, but it was hot, it was filling, and it was fast. So here's an important question. If Rome had all this fast food, who was actually eating it? And the answer reveals something really interesting about Roman daily life. Most Romans, especially those living in cities, did not have kitchens. Let me say that again because it's kind of mind-blowing. The majority of urban Romans had no way to cook at home. If you were wealthy, sure, you had a big domus with a full kitchen, servants, and private dining rooms. But most people in Rome and cities like Pompeii lived in apartment buildings called insulae. These were multi-story, densely packed, and famously prone to fires. Cooking with open flames in these wooden and brick tinderboxes was dangerous and in many cases actually restricted or outright banned. Many insula didn't even have running water, let alone a kitchen. So if you couldn't cook at home, what did you do? You ate out. Every single day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The Thermopolium wasn't a treat or a convenience. For millions of Romans, it was the only option. This is why there were so many of them. The Roman fast food industry wasn't a luxury. It was essential urban infrastructure, and the clientele reflected this. Thermopolia served everyone from laborers and craftsmen to merchants, travelers, and even enslaved people who were sent out to pick up food for a household. Graffiti scratched into the walls of Thermopolia in Pompeii includes messages from customers, names, crude jokes, and even what appear to be complaints about the service. Some things truly never change. There was, however, a social stigma attached to eating at Thermopolia among the Roman elite. Writers like Juvenal and other satirists sometimes mocked the food and the crowds. The upper classes saw frequent Thermopolium dining as a mark of lower status. Sound familiar? We've got the same thing today. There's always been a cultural divide between people who eat fast food regularly and people who look down on it, even though fast food feeds the world. But Thermopolia were more than just places to eat. They were social hubs. Think about your local coffee shop or your favorite fast food spot where you always see the same people. Thermopolia served the same function in Roman cities. Many Thermopolia had small back rooms with tables and benches where customers could sit down, eat together, and talk. Some had upper floors that could be rented as rooms, making them a combination restaurant and inn. Archaeologists found dice, gaming pieces, and tokens at several Thermopolia sites, which tells us people were hanging out, gambling, socializing, and spending time in these places beyond just eating. At the Pompeii Thermopolium excavated in 2020, researchers even found the remains of a small dog, likely a pet rather than a working animal based on its size. This little dog, just about 9 or 10 inches tall at the shoulder, was a companion animal. Somebody brought their tiny dog to the fast food counter. We were doing that 2,000 years ago too. They also found human remains at that site. A man, likely in his 50s, was found on what appeared to be a bed in the back room of the Thermopolium. He may have been a worker, or even the owner, caught in the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD. His bones tell the story of a life of hard work. This was someone who spent decades feeding his community. So why does all of this matter beyond being a cool historical fact? Because it challenges the way most of us think about ancient civilizations. We tend to imagine the ancient world as primitive, slow, and fundamentally different from ours. But Thermopolia tell a different story. They tell us that Romans had complex urban economies, supply chains for food distribution, standardized restaurant designs, menus that catered to different budgets, and a massive dining-out culture that rivaled anything we have today. The Roman Empire at its peak had over 60 million people. Rome itself may have had over 1 million residents at its height. Feeding a city that size required systems, logistics, and infrastructure that were genuinely sophisticated. Thermopolia were one visible piece of that puzzle. Behind every counter full of hot food was a network of farmers, merchants, transporters, and cooks making it all work. And when you stand in front of a fully excavated Thermopolium in Pompeii, when you see the counter, the pots, the faded frescoes, and you realize that someone stood in that exact spot 2,000 years ago doing exactly what you do at lunchtime, it collapses the distance between us and them. History isn't abstract. It's a person standing at a counter, hungry, tired, maybe in a hurry, ordering a bowl of stew and a cup of wine before getting back to work. That's universal. That's human. So the next time someone tells you fast food is a modern invention, you can tell them that the Romans had it figured out before most of Europe even had cities. 80 fast food restaurants in one small town, menus preserved in volcanic ash, a little dog at the counter. The receipts are in. And they are 2,000 years old. If you learned something new today, or if you just love the idea of a Roman Big Mac, do me a favor and smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel more than you probably realize. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you even doing? Hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a video, and I want to hear from you in the comments. If you could eat one meal at a Roman Thermopolium, what would you order? The pork stew, the snails, the mystery meat casserole? Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.